What if I told you there's a film so haunted? It didn't just scare its audience, it changed them. The director swore it was fiction until the footage started editing itself. This is the story of Alan Voss and the movie that consumed him. Comment cursed, if you're brave enough to keep watching. Alan Voss wasn't just another director. He had a reputation. Films so raw, so real, they didn't just entertain. They left scars. The kind of movies that made people sit in silence long after the credits rolled, like they'd been hollowed out and filled with someone else's pain. And that's exactly what he wanted. Then he found the Blackwood Apartments. The place was a graveyard of cracked walls and peeling wallpaper, still smelling faintly of smoke decades after the fire. The kind of ruin that made your skin prickle the second you stepped inside, like the air itself was holding its breath. The official report called it an accident. Faulty wiring, they said. But locals knew better. They whispered about screams that night, about a mother, trapped, begging for help that never came, and about her last words, choked out before the flames took her. "You'll tell our story." Alan loved that detail. Too perfect. Too tragic. He scribbled it in his notebook, like it was just another piece of the script. Then the camera started rolling. At first, it was little things. Things you could almost explain away. A shadow moving where no one stood. A sudden chill in the middle of a take. So cold the actor's breath turned to fog. The crew laughed it off. Old buildings creak. Drafts happen. But then Marcus, the lead, started changing. Marcus was a soldier, steady, hardened, the kind of guy who didn't flinch at much. But one morning, Alan found him pale and shaking in his trailer. "I keep hearing her," he muttered. "A woman. She keeps saying, 'Tell them what happened.'" Alan played it cool. Method acting, right? Marcus was just diving deep. Except the voice wasn't just in his head anymore. During editing, Alan saw it. A flicker in the background of shot. A doorway that should have been empty. But there she was. A woman. Barely more than a smudge of gray against the dark. Just standing there. Watching. He rewound. Played it again. There. Frame by frame. She was clearer. Not an extra. Not a trick of the light. Her face was turned just enough to see her mouth moving. Tell them what happened. And that's when Alan realized he wasn't making a movie about the tragedy. The tragedy was making him. It started small. The kind of things you could almost ignore. Almost. A grip would be adjusting a light. When he'd catch movement from the corner of his eye. Just a flicker. A shape darting past the doorway. But when he turned, nothing there. Just empty halls, rotting wood, and a heavy silence that clung to Blackwood like a second skin. He'd laugh it off, rub his arms like it was cold, and get back to work. But by the third time it happened, he wasn't laughing anymore. Then came the cold, not just a draft. Anyone who's worked in an old building knows those. This was different. It would hit in patches, sudden and sharp, like walking through an invisible wall of winter. 1 second you're fine. The next, your breath is foggy in front of you, your fingers going stiff. The crew started marking the spots with tape, avoiding them like they were cursed. And maybe they were, because the cold didn't just sit there. It moved. But the worst part? Marcus. Marcus was supposed to be the steady one. A soldier, like I said. The kind of man who didn't jump at shadows. But then he started knowing things. Things no one had told him. Things no one could have told him. They were filming a scene where his character walks through the burned-out remains of an apartment. Fiction mirroring reality, just like Alan wanted. And out of nowhere, Marcus stops. His whole body goes rigid. He stares at a blackened patch on the wall, his voice barely above a whisper. This is where she died. The little girl. She was hiding in the closet. She thought it would save her. Silence. The crew froze. Because here's the thing. Alan had never written that in the script. The police reports never mentioned it. There was no little girl hiding in a closet. At least, not in any version of the story anyone knew. Then, from somewhere deep in the building, a sound. Faint, almost lost under the hum of equipment. A child's laughter, distant, echoing, and gone before anyone could even react. That was the moment the crew stopped pretending this was just another shoot. That was the moment they realized Blackwood wasn't just a setting. It was a character, and it was rewriting the script. Alan always worked late. There was something about the quiet of an empty editing bay, the glow of the screen in the dark, that helped him see the truth of his films. But that night, the footage showed him something else entirely. He was reviewing the day's takes, scrubbing through the scenes with tired eyes. Just another routine check. Or so he thought. Then he saw it. A flicker in the background of a shot where nothing should have been moving. A doorway, half collapsed, framing nothing but darkness. Except it wasn't empty. He leaned in, rewound, played it again in slow motion. There, a face. Pale, unmistakably human, but wrong in ways he couldn't quite name. The eyes were too dark, the mouth slightly open like it was caught mid-breath. Just standing there, watching. Not an extra, not a reflection, not anything that belonged in his film. His first instinct was to laugh. A trick of the light, maybe some weird artifact from the old building's decay. But then he checked another take, and another. She was in all of them. Same face, same hollow stare. Only now she was closer. In one shot, her fingers curled around the doorframe. In the next, she'd taken a step forward. Frame by frame, scene by scene, she was moving toward the camera. Toward him. Alan's hands shook as he clicked through the footage. His throat went dry. Because this wasn't just some ghost caught on film. This was something interacting with it. Something that knew it was being recorded. The worst part? She only appeared in the quiet moments. The spaces between dialogue. The pauses where the actors took a breath. Like she'd been there the whole time, waiting for the noise to die down, so she could be seen. And she wasn't just watching. She was waiting. The basement of Blackwood Apartments wasn't a place you went unless you had to, even with a flashlight. The darkness there felt different. Thick, hungry, like it had been waiting years for someone foolish enough to disturb it. But Alan had to know, after what he'd seen in the footage, after the way Marcus had looked at him with those hollow, knowing eyes, he had to understand what was happening. The stairs groaned under his weight, each step sounding too loud in the silence. The air smelled of damp and something older, something bitter, burntwood, maybe, or the ghost of smoke that never really left. His light flickered over piles of debris. Broken furniture, water-stained boxes, the shattered remains of lives interrupted. And then he saw it. Tucked between the rubble, half hidden under a collapsed shelf, was a book, or what was left of one. The cover was blackened, the edges curled from heat, but it had survived. Barely. Alan's fingers left print in the ash as he picked it up, the brittle pages crackling under his touch. A diary. The handwriting was shaky in places, rushed in others, like the person writing it had been afraid to stop. Most of it was mundane, groceries, appointments, little notes about a child's laughter echoing through the halls. But as he turned the pages, the entries changed. The words grew tighter, more desperate. He's watching us again. The super won't do anything. Says I'm imagining things. The locks don't stop him. He has keys. And then near the end, the ink smeared in places from tears or from fingers shaking too badly to write cleanly. He came in while we were sleeping. Poured something. I smelled it before I saw him. Gasoline. I tried to scream, but he was already striking the match. He smiled while he did it. Smiled. The last entry wasn't dated. Just 3 sentences, written so hard the pen had nearly torn to the paper. If we burn, you'll burn with us. All of you. Everyone who lives here. Everyone who watches. You'll tell our story. And then you'll join us. Alan's breath caught in his throat. Because suddenly, it wasn't just words on a page. It was a promise. One that had been waiting decades to be kept. And he'd just woken it up. Alan stopped sleeping. Not by choice. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. The woman from the footage. The mother. She wasn't just in the film anymore. She was in the edges of his vision when he turned too quickly, in the static of his dreams when he finally passed out at his desk. And she was always saying the same thing. Tell them what happened. At first, he thought it was stress, exhaustion, the kind of thing that happens when you push yourself too hard for too long. But then he started finding scenes in his film that he didn't remember shooting. Whole sequences, perfectly framed, professionally lit, and he had no memory of directing them. The worst was the climax. It was supposed to be symbolic, smoke, shadows, the actor running through a burning hallway. But when Alan reviewed the footage, it wasn't Marcus on screen anymore. It was someone else. A child's small hands beating against a locked door. A woman screaming. Not acting, not performing, but raw. Animal terror caught on film. The camera shook like whoever was holding it was running. Stumbling, the flames licking at the edges of the frame. It wasn't a recreation. It was a real thing. And Alan had no idea how it got there. The premiere was worse. The audience didn't clap when it ended. They didn't move. They just sat there, some of them crying silently, others staring at the blank screen like they were still seeing things. One woman had to be carried out. She kept whispering, "I was in the closet. I was in the closet." Over and over, her fingers clawed at her own arms like she was trying to scratch something out of her skin. Alan tried to tell himself it was just a powerful film, that he'd done his job too well. But then he looked down at his hands and saw the burns. Fresh, still blistering. And he knew the story wasn't finished with him yet. They never found Alan. Not really. Oh! There were searches, of course. Cops poking through the ruins of Blackwood apartments with flashlights and bad attitudes. Convinced this was just another Hollywood weirdo pulling a disappearing act for attention. They found his editing equipment still running in the basement. The chair pushed back like he'd just gotten up for coffee. Found his car parked out front. Keys still in the ignition. But Alan was gone. The official story says he cracked under pressure. That the stress of the film, the weird rumors, the audience reactions, it all got to him, and he wandered off to start fresh somewhere no one would recognize his face. That's the neat explanation, the one that lets everyone sleep at night. But the people who were there, the ones who worked on that cursed film, they know better. They talk about it in whispers at industry parties. If they talk about it at all. How sometimes, if you drive past Blackwood late at night, you can see a single light burning in the basement window. How the glow isn't steady like a bulb should be, but flickers and jumps like an old film projector. The studio locked the movie away, of course. Buried it deep in their archives with half a dozen legal warnings slapped on the case. But things have a way of slipping out, don't they? Pirated copies floating around the underground horror scene. Bootleg DVDs sold at conventions with the title scratched off. A grainy upload that appears on obscure forums every October, then gets taken down by morning. People who watch it say strange things happen afterward. They wake up smelling smoke. They hear whispers in empty rooms. Some claim to see figures standing in doorways just for a second before they blink and the shapes are gone. The really unlucky ones say they've started remembering things that never happened to them. The sound of a child crying behind a locked door. The feel of blistering heat on their skin. The moment when you realize the person smiling at you across the room isn't holding a drink. They're holding a match. So if you ever come across a film called Coming Home, if you ever see that title scrawled on an unmarked tape or catch it flashing across your screen in some dark corner of the internet, ask yourself one question. Do you really want to know how the story ends? This story messed me up. Do you think Alan's still out there, or did the film take him somewhere worse? Drop your theories below. And if you want more cursed tales, hit subscribe. Because trust me, we've only scratched the surface.